I discovered I won $135 million on the lottery ticket my parents gave me as a gift during the family gathering where they proudly presented my brother Scott with the keys to a fully paid house. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the winning numbers in disbelief, remembering the smirks and whispers when I unwrapped the $5 ticket while Scott got a $450,000 home. The lifelong pattern of favoritism had reached its breaking point. The universe had given me a chance at justice, and I would not waste it. I never wanted to become bitter. Growing up in the suburbs of Portland, I always tried to be the son my parents wanted. As the older brother, I felt responsible for setting a good example for Scott. I worked hard in school, never caused trouble, and helped around the house without being asked. But somehow, it was never enough. The pattern started when we were kids. On my 10th birthday, I got a used bicycle from the neighbor's garage sale. 2 months later, when Scott turned 8, he unwrapped a brand new Mongoose mountain bike. My parents beamed as he rode circles around the driveway. Scott has a natural athletic ability. My father Franklin would tell relatives, "We need to nurture that talent." Meanwhile, my straight-A report cards earned me a pat on the back and a, "That's what we expect from you, Randy." As we entered our teenage years, the disparities became more pronounced. When I turned 16, I received driving privileges on my mom's old Honda, but only if I paid for my own gas and insurance. I took a job at the local grocery store, stocking shelves after school and on weekends. When Scott turned 16, my parents surprised him with a used but impressive Ford Mustang. "He needs to look good for the ladies," my dad joked, tossing him the keys. I remember watching from the porch, calculating how many hours of minimum wage work it would take me to afford something similar. The answer was depressing. College was where the contrast became impossible to ignore. Despite earning a partial academic scholarship, I still needed to work 30 hours a week at the campus bookstore and take out student loans to afford tuition. My degree in education was practical but not flashy. Scott chose a business degree at a private university with a tuition nearly triple what my state school cost. My parents paid for everything from tuition to his apartment to a monthly spending allowance. An investment in his future, they called it. After graduation, I secured a position teaching science at Roosevelt High School. The pay wasn't great, but I loved working with students who reminded me of myself, growing up aspiring for more. I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment, drove my 10-year-old Honda, and paid off my student loans on schedule. I was proud of building my life through my own efforts. Scott bounced between 3 jobs before landing a position as a pharmaceutical sales representative. His natural charm and good looks helped him excel in a field where personality opened doors. Within 2 years, he was earning triple my teaching salary, traveling to conferences in Las Vegas and Miami, and dating a series of increasingly attractive women. My girlfriend Jessica was the bright spot in my life. We met at a professional development seminar for educators 3 years ago. She taught English at a neighboring school district and understood the rewards and frustrations of teaching. Unlike my family, she valued my dedication to education and never once suggested I should find a more lucrative career. "You're changing lives every day," she would tell me when I felt discouraged. "That's worth more than a commission check." Last month, my father called with unusual enthusiasm. "Big family dinner this Saturday. Your mother and I have some important announcements. Be at our house at 6 sharp. When I arrived, my parents' home was decorated as if for a celebration. Streamers hung from the chandelier, and my mother's best china adorned the dining table. Scott arrived 15 minutes late with his newest girlfriend, Amber, a blonde pharmaceutical rep with perfect teeth and a laugh that carried across rooms. My father clinked his glass as we finished dessert. "Your mother and I have some wonderful news. As you know, I'm retiring next month after 35 years at the firm. We've been blessed financially, and we want to set up both our sons for success." My heart lifted momentarily. Was this finally the moment when my parents would recognize my steady dedication? "Scott," my father continued, turning toward my brother, "you've shown such promise in your career. We're so proud of how you've established yourself in such a competitive field." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin as my father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a set of keys and a folded document. "We're giving you the lake house, son. Fully paid off. The deed is in your name now." The lake house. My parents' vacation property worth easily $450,000. I struggled to keep my expression neutral as Scott's face lit up with surprise and joy. Are you serious? That's incredible. He jumped up to hug both my parents while Amber clapped enthusiastically. We know you'll make good use of it, my mother said, and it's a perfect place to start the next chapter of your life. There was an awkward pause before my father turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And Randy, we have something for you too. From his other pocket, he produced a small envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a single lottery ticket for that night's Powerball drawing. Who knows, my mother said with a nervous laugh. Maybe you'll win something. The table fell silent for a moment before Scott broke the tension. Hey bro, if you win, you can buy your own lake house. Everyone laughed except Jessica, who squeezed my hand under the table. I forced a smile. Thanks. That's very thoughtful. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of Scott and my parents discussing renovation plans for the lake house. I sat quietly, adding appropriate nods and one-word responses when expected. On the drive home, Jessica finally said what we both were thinking. That was cruel, Randy. I can't believe they did that to you. I'm used to it, I replied, though the ache in my chest suggested otherwise. You shouldn't be. No one should be used to being treated as less than. 3 days later, I was grading papers in my apartment when I remembered the lottery ticket, still tucked in my wallet. The drawing had been the night before. With a sigh, I pulled up the winning numbers on my phone, expecting nothing. The first number matched, then the second. By the fourth matching number, my hands were shaking. When all 6 numbers aligned perfectly with my ticket, I stared in disbelief, checking and rechecking for nearly an hour. I had won. The estimated jackpot was $135 million. For the first hour after discovering the matching numbers, I convinced myself I was mistaken. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like me. Ordinary, unremarkable Randy Wilson, high school science teacher and perpetual family disappointment. I paced my small apartment, double and triple checking the numbers on my phone against the ticket. 6 for 6. No mistake. I called the Oregon Lottery Commission as soon as they opened the next morning, my voice barely steady enough to communicate. I think I have a winning Powerball ticket for last night's drawing, I told the representative. Sir, if you believe you have the jackpot ticket, you'll need to come to our Salem office in person, the woman explained patiently. Bring identification, the signed ticket, and we'll begin the verification process. But please keep your ticket secure, don't show it to anyone. Take photos of it, or post about it online. I called in sick to school for the first time in 3 years and drove the hour to Salem with the ticket tucked into an envelope inside my jacket pocket. Every few minutes, I patted my chest to make sure it was still there. The lottery headquarters was surprisingly ordinary, a beige government building that could have housed any bureaucratic department. I was escorted to a private room where 2 officials verified my ticket under special lights and scanners. Congratulations, Mr. Wilson, the older official finally said, extending his hand. You are indeed our jackpot winner. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the reality finally sank in. The advertised jackpot is $135 million, the woman explained. You have 60 days to decide whether you want the 30-year annuity or the lump sum cash option, which would be about $86.4 million after federal and state taxes. They provided me with a packet of information and the business card for the lottery's financial counselor. We recommend you consult with financial advisors and attorneys before making any decisions or announcements, the man advised. And be prepared. Your life is about to change dramatically. I nodded dumbly, clutching the information packet. When will people find out? I asked. Oregon requires winner identification be made public, the woman explained. But we won't release your name until you officially claim the prize. You have up to 1 year to do so. I drove home in a daze, the reality of my situation slowly crystallizing. By the time I reached my apartment, my shock had given way to something unexpected, not excitement, but a strange, calm clarity. I called Jessica. Can you come over after work? There's something I need to tell you. It's important. 4 hours later, Jessica sat across from me at my kitchen table, her eyes wide with disbelief as I showed her the verification paperwork. Randy, This is life-changing, she whispered. I know. Are you going to tell your family? She asked. The question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through my thoughts. My family. The same people who had given me a $5 lottery ticket as an afterthought while handing my brother a house worth nearly $500,000. Not yet, I said slowly. I need time to think about what to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. The local news reported that the winning ticket had been sold in Portland, and speculation was beginning about who the lucky winner might be. My phone rang at 7:30 the next morning. Scott's name flashed on the screen. Hey bro, did you see the news? Someone in Portland won the Powerball. Wouldn't it be hilarious if it was your ticket? You'd finally have something to show for yourself. The casual cruelty of his words hit differently now. Yeah, I saw that, I replied evenly. Already checked my ticket. Not even one matching number. Figured. Scott laughed. Hey, Amber and I are thinking about knocking down a wall at the lake house to open up the living room. Dad thinks it's a great idea. Sounds nice, I said, ending the call as quickly as possible. Within days, I'd assembled a team, a financial advisor, an estate attorney, and a certified public accountant, all bound by confidentiality agreements. On their advice, I established a blind trust to claim the winnings, which would provide a thin layer of privacy, at least temporarily. You'll want to set up various trusts and investment structures, my new financial advisor Graham explained. With proper management, this money can last generations, fund charitable works, and still allow you to live very comfortably. I don't need anything extravagant, I told them, surprising even myself with how little my desires had changed. I just want security, and maybe the freedom to make some changes in my life. The most immediate change was practical. I moved from my apartment to a hotel under a false name to avoid the press when the news eventually broke. I continued teaching, needing the familiar routine to ground me during this surreal time. 2 weeks after discovering my win, local news reported that the mystery Powerball winner had hired legal representation and would be claiming the prize through a trust. Speculation ran wild about the winner's identity. That evening, Scott called again. So Dad and I were talking about investing in some rental properties together. Great tax advantages. Since you're so responsible with money, I thought maybe you'd want in. You'd need to put up around 50 grand. You've got some savings, right? The old Randy would have felt inadequate, embarrassed by his inability to participate in the financial ventures his family assumed were normal. The new Randy simply said, "Thanks, but I'm focusing on other priorities right now." Your loss, Scott replied. These opportunities don't come around often for people like you. People like you. The phrase echoed in my head long after we hung up. I was beginning to understand that the lottery ticket wasn't just about the money. It was a test that my family had failed before the first number was even drawn. The family dinner the following weekend was Scott's idea, ostensibly to celebrate his amazing progress on the lake house renovations. In reality, it was another opportunity for him to bask in my parents' adoration. I arrived with Jessica to find my parents already enraptured by Scott's animated descriptions of his plans for a boat dock and expanded deck. It's going to be the perfect summer entertaining space, Scott was saying as we walked in. I'm thinking of those loungers like they have at the resort in Cabo. Remember, Dad? My father nodded enthusiastically. First class all the way, son. My mother embraced Jessica warmly. She'd always liked her, perhaps seeing her as the best my mother thought I could do, and gave me a distracted pat on the shoulder. Randy, good timing. Scott was just telling us about the renovations. So I gathered, I replied, pouring myself a glass of water. With my newfound wealth still a secret, I observed the familiar dynamics with fresh eyes. Scott dominated dinner conversation as usual, but now I noticed the subtle ways my parents reinforced the hierarchy. They asked my brother detailed questions about his work, his renovations, his girlfriend. When I mentioned an innovative science curriculum I was developing for underserved students, my mother nodded politely before turning to Scott. Have you decided on the kitchen countertops yet? I think granite would be stunning. After dessert, my father cleared his throat. Scott has some exciting news to share. Scott grinned, reaching into his pocket. I was going to wait, but what the hell? He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a diamond ring. I'm asking Amber to marry me next weekend. Got it all planned at her favorite restaurant. My parents erupted in excitement. That's wonderful. She's perfect for you. We've been waiting for this. I offered sincere congratulations. Despite our complicated relationship, I didn't wish Scott unhappiness. We want to help with the wedding, my mother announced. We're thinking around 100,000 should cover a truly special celebration. I nearly choked on my coffee. $100,000 for a wedding, after giving him a $450,000 house just weeks ago. Meanwhile, the lottery ticket they'd given me, which had ironically changed my life, had been purchased as an afterthought. The conversation shifted to wedding venues and guest lists. Then, unexpectedly, my father turned to me. Randy, your brother's taking this big step forward. Have you thought about your future? You and Jessica have been together, 3 years now? Yes, I said simply, taking Jessica's hand. Well, my father continued, when you do decide to propose, don't worry about a big ring. Jessica doesn't seem like the type to need something flashy. Jessica stiffened beside me. I squeezed her hand gently. Actually, my father continued, oblivious to the tension, we wanted to discuss something with you, Randy. Your mother and I are considering helping Scott with another investment opportunity. There's a commercial property near his territory that would be perfect for a side business he's developing. My mother jumped in. We've put quite a bit into the lake house and will be helping with the wedding. So we were wondering if you might contribute to this investment. For the family. You've always been so good with saving. I sat in stunned silence. They were asking me, a public school teacher, to help fund my pharmaceutical sales rep brother's side business after giving him property and a lavish wedding. How much were you thinking? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. 30,000 would be helpful, my father replied casually, as if asking to borrow a lawnmower. Scott would give you a small percentage, of course, maybe 3%. Jessica's grip on my hand tightened to the point of pain. I'll think about it, I said finally. On the drive home, Jessica could no longer contain her outrage. $30,000? Do they have any idea what teachers make, or how insulting that entire conversation was? They've never had any idea, I replied, feeling strangely calm. They've never needed to. You have to tell them about the lottery, Randy. Not to rub it in their faces, but because this dynamic isn't healthy for anyone, including them. I considered her words carefully. Not yet. There's something I need to understand first. That night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old family photos on my phone, studying the patterns I'd accepted for so long. In almost every picture, Scott was center frame, often with our father's arm around his shoulder. I was on the periphery, half smiling, always slightly out of focus. The next morning, I received a text from Scott. Hey bro, when can Dad expect that investment money? Looking to move quick on this opportunity. No pleasantries. No acknowledgement of the enormity of what he was asking. Just expectation. Meanwhile, I was in meetings with my financial team, structuring trusts, setting up charitable foundations, and creating a secure future not just for myself but potentially for generations to come. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 days later, my father called. Randy, your mother and I have been talking. We know 30,000 is a lot to ask, but we thought perhaps you could take out a small loan. The return on investment would cover the interest. Why not take out the loan yourselves? I asked. A pause. Well, we've extended ourselves quite a bit with Scott's house and wedding. Our credit is a bit tight right now. I thanked him for the explanation and promised to consider it. After hanging up, I called my attorney. Doug, I need you to find out something discreetly. Did my parents take out a second mortgage recently? And if so, what was it for? 3 days later, I had my answer. My parents had indeed taken a second mortgage on their primary residence, borrowing $250,000. The timing aligned perfectly with Scott's engagement. I sat with this information for a full day before making a decision. Then I called Doug back. I want to pay off my parents' second mortgage. Anonymously. Through the trust. Can we do that? Unusual. But yes, he confirmed. May I ask why? Because regardless of how they've treated me, I don't want them risking their retirement for my brother's wedding. Doug arranged everything. 3 days later, my parents would receive notification that their mortgage had been paid in full by an anonymous benefactor. With that piece in place, I moved forward with the next phase of my plan. I had decided to purchase a home, not a mansion, but a comfortable 4-bedroom house in a good neighborhood with a view of Mount Hood. The kind of home a successful professional might own, noticeable but not ostentatious. "Are you ready for this?" Jessica asked as we toured the property with our realtor. "No," I admitted, "but I don't think anyone ever is." The house I purchased was nothing like the gaudy mansions featured in lottery winner television specials. It was a well-built 4-bedroom craftsman-style home in the West Hills, with a beautiful view of the city. At $1.2 million, it was expensive by Portland standards, but nowhere near what I could afford. More importantly, it felt like a home I could have plausibly purchased on my own through years of saving and a substantial mortgage. "You're really not going to buy a Ferrari or something ridiculous?" Jessica asked as we walked through the empty living room after closing. "What would I do with a Ferrari?" I laughed. "I'm still me, just with financial security." "That's why I love you," she said, wrapping her arms around my waist. "But you know your family's going to have questions about how you afforded this place on a teacher's salary." "I'm counting on it," I replied. My wealth management team had helped me create a comprehensive financial plan that reflected my values rather than impulses. The bulk of my winnings went into diversified investments, with significant portions allocated to a charitable foundation focused on educational equity. Most lottery winners go broke within 5 years. My financial advisor Graham had warned. They spend on depreciating assets and get caught in an ever-escalating lifestyle that can't be sustained. That's not going to be me, I promised. I had established 3 main financial priorities: long-term security, meaningful philanthropy, and measured personal comfort. I would continue teaching. I loved it too much to stop, but would establish scholarships and resources for underprivileged students. Jessica and I spent hours discussing how wealth would and wouldn't change our relationship. We agreed that while our lifestyle might improve in sensible ways, our values and goals would remain consistent. "I don't want a partner who's suddenly flying private jets and buying islands," she said one night as we sat on the floor of our new, still unfurnished living room. "What about a small island? Just a tiny one?" I joked, earning a playful swat. "Be serious. This is important." "I know." I nodded. "I want us to use this money thoughtfully, not let it use us. And I definitely don't want it to change how we feel about each other." The Lottery Commission had announced that the winner had claimed the prize through a trust. There was media speculation, but my name hadn't been connected yet. I knew that wouldn't last forever, but I needed enough time to handle things my way. My first major decision was what to do about my family. After much reflection and several long conversations with Jessica, I decided against revenge or permanent estrangement. Instead, I wanted to create an opportunity for genuine transformation, a chance for them to see the patterns that had defined our family dynamic and potentially grow from that awareness. "You're a teacher to the core," Jessica observed. "Even with your family, you're thinking about the lesson plan." I smiled. Some habits die hard. The plan was simple but deliberate. I would invite my family to a housewarming dinner. The setting alone, my new, obviously expensive home, would create immediate questions. Rather than answering directly, I would gradually guide the conversation toward our family history and the lottery win, giving them space to reveal their true reactions before I explained my decisions about the money. "What if they just ask for money and don't recognize how they've treated you?" Jessica asked. "Then I'll have my answer," I said quietly, "and I'll make my decisions accordingly." 2 days before the planned dinner, I received a call from my mother. "Randy, the strangest thing happened. We got notification that our second mortgage has been paid in full." "That's amazing," I replied. "Did they say why?" "Something about an anonymous benefactor. Your father thinks it might be a wealthy client from his firm, but no one's taking credit. It's nearly $250,000. "Wow," I said. "That's incredibly fortunate. How does it feel?" "Like a weight has been lifted," she admitted. "We were stretching ourselves thin with Scott's wedding coming up." "Speaking of stretched thin," I said, seizing the moment, "I'd love for you all to come see my new place. I'm hosting a small housewarming dinner this Saturday." A pause. "New place? You moved out of your apartment?" "Yes. Something a bit more permanent." 6 o'clock? Scott and Amber are invited too, of course." After agreeing, my mother added hesitantly, "Randy, about that investment opportunity with Scott. Now that this mortgage situation has resolved itself, we won't need to trouble you for that money. I'm glad to hear it, I said sincerely. After hanging up, I sat alone in my new kitchen, contemplating the path ahead. I wasn't seeking revenge or trying to buy my family's love. I wanted something both simpler and more complicated. Honest recognition of our patterns, and a chance for genuine connection based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The day before the dinner, I received a surprising call from my childhood friend Tony, who worked at Roosevelt High with me. Randy, there's a rumor going around that you won the lottery. Someone said they saw paperwork on Principal Gardner's desk about a leave of absence for you. Is it true? I sighed. Small leaks were inevitable. Tony, I can't comment on that right now, but I promise you'll be among the first to know when I can. Just please keep any rumors to yourself for now. Sure thing, man. But if it is true, holy shit. After hanging up, I called Doug. We need to accelerate our timeline. The news is starting to leak. Understood. We'll prepare for media inquiries, beginning Monday. I spent that evening with Jessica, finalizing preparations for the dinner that would change everything. We cooked together, set the table with new dishes, and strategized how to navigate what would undoubtedly be a charged emotional situation. Remember, Jessica said, squeezing my hand, no matter how they react, this is about your growth, not theirs. You're setting boundaries and speaking your truth. Whatever they do with that is their journey. I nodded, grateful not for the first time that I had found someone who saw me clearly, long before I had anything material to offer. Tomorrow everything changes, I said. No, Jessica corrected gently. You already changed when you decided to stop accepting the role they assigned you. Tomorrow they just find out about it. Saturday evening arrived with perfect early autumn weather. My new home was finally furnished enough to look intentional rather than empty. Jessica had arranged flowers from the local farmer's market, and the smell of roasting chicken filled the kitchen. Ready? She asked, straightening my collar unnecessarily. As I'll ever be, I replied. At precisely 6:15, Scott was predictably late. My parents' car pulled into the driveway, followed shortly by Scott's BMW. I watched through the window as they emerged, looking up at the house with obvious surprise. My father rang the doorbell, his expression already set in confusion. I opened the door with a warm smile. Welcome, come in. They entered cautiously, eyes darting around the spacious entryway and open-concept living area with its view of the downtown skyline. Randy, my mother began, this is quite a step up from your apartment, my father finished, not bothering to hide his confusion. Scott and Amber arrived seconds later, with Scott immediately voicing what everyone was thinking. Dude, what the hell? How can you afford this place? Are you dealing drugs or something? I laughed. No, definitely not dealing drugs. Let me take your coats and get everyone a drink. We have a lot to talk about over dinner. I guided them to the dining room, where Jessica was putting final touches on the table setting. The conversation remained superficial as I poured wine and served appetizers, though I could feel the undercurrent of questions growing stronger. Once we were all seated, and I had served the main course, my father set down his fork. Randy, I think it's time you explain this. He gestured around. This house must be worth what? 1.5, 2 million? You're a teacher. I took a slow sip of water. You're right, Dad. I am a teacher. I'm also someone who recently had a significant change in circumstances. What does that mean? Scott asked, leaning forward. It means, I continued evenly, that I've had an opportunity to reflect on what's truly important in life, especially regarding family relationships. My mother's brow furrowed. Randy, you're not making sense. Where did all this come from? I considered my next words carefully. Do you remember the last family gathering at your house? When you gave Scott the lake house? My parents exchanged glances. Scott shifted uncomfortably. Of course, my father said. That was a special evening. Yes, it was, I agreed. You gave Scott property worth nearly $500,000, and you gave me the lottery ticket, my mother finished, her voice suddenly quiet. I nodded. The lottery ticket. The table fell silent as understanding began to dawn. "No way," Scott whispered. "No fucking way." My father's face had gone pale. "Randy, are you saying—" "I won," I confirmed simply. $135 million. The room exploded with reactions. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father froze, fork suspended midair. Scott jumped to his feet, sending his chair toppling backward. "You're lying," he shouted. "This isn't funny, Randy." Jessica reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm not lying, Scott. I claimed the prize through a trust. The announcement was in the paper, though they didn't release my name." "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother demanded, her voice trembling. "Because I needed time," I explained. "Time to process what happened, make financial arrangements, and most importantly, think about what this meant for all our relationships." My father seemed to recover first, his businessman's mind clearly calculating. "Son, this is incredible news. We should talk about investment strategies, tax planning. I have excellent financial advisors." "Dad," I said gently, "everything has been carefully structured." Scott had begun pacing behind his chair. "I can't believe this. You've had this money for weeks and didn't say anything? While we've been planning a wedding and trying to figure out business investments? That's beyond selfish, Randy." I took another sip of water. "Is it, Scott? More selfish than expecting your teacher brother to loan you $30,000 for a business venture after you received a house and a $100,000 wedding?" My brother's face flushed red. "That's completely different." "How?" I asked simply. "Because," he sputtered, "because I was going to pay you back. Obviously. Like you paid back the college tuition, the down payment on your first car, the security deposit on your first apartment." "Randy, that's enough," my father interjected. "What's important now is that we come together as a family during this extraordinary time. This is a blessing for all of us." I studied him carefully. "Is it a blessing for all of us? Or do you see it as a blessing for you?" My mother reached across the table. "Sweetheart, what your father means is that family supports each other. We've always believed that. Have you?" I asked quietly. "Because from my perspective, support in our family has primarily flowed in one direction." "That's not fair," my father protested. "Let's talk about fair," I suggested. "Let's talk about my entire childhood watching Scott receive opportunities and gifts that were never offered to me. Let's talk about working my way through college while Scott's education was fully funded. Let's talk about the fact that when you decided to set up both sons for success, one son got property worth nearly $500,000, and the other got a $5 lottery ticket." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "No one could have known you'd win," my father finally said defensively. "That's precisely the point, Dad. You didn't think to give me something of actual value. The lottery ticket was a joke at my expense, a way to technically include me while making it clear where I stood in the family hierarchy. We never meant to make you feel less than," my mother insisted, tears forming in her eyes. "I believe you," I said softly. "I don't think it was intentional cruelty, but the pattern is undeniable, and it's gone on my entire life." Scott had regained some composure and retaken his seat. "So what now? You brought us here to rub your good fortune in our faces?" "Real mature, Randy." I shook my head. "No, Scott. I brought you here because despite everything, you're my family, and I wanted to give us all a chance to reset our relationship on more honest terms." "What does that mean exactly?" my father asked cautiously. "It means," I explained, "that I'm willing to have a relationship with all of you, but not one based on financial expectation or obligation. I won't be buying your love or respect. No one's asking you to do that," my mother insisted. Scott leaned forward suddenly. "Speaking of financial matters, I've actually been working on this business concept for high-end medical spas. Perfect timing, really. I'd only need about $2 million to get it off the ground, and with your investment, we could keep it all in the family." Jessica nearly choked on her wine. I gave her a gentle pat on the back before addressing my brother. "Scott, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Your first thought isn't about our relationship or how we might support each other emotionally, it's about how my money can fund your next venture." "I'm just being practical," he defended. "You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Why wouldn't you help family?" "Would you have helped me if the situation were reversed?" I asked. He hesitated just a moment too long. That's what I thought, I said quietly. This isn't fair, my father interjected. Your brother has always been there for you. When? I challenged. Name one time Scott made a sacrifice for me or supported me when it wasn't convenient for him. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. I continued, we need to be honest about the dynamics in our family. I'm not saying this to hurt anyone, but because I believe we have a chance to build something healthier going forward. My mother wiped away tears. Randy, what do you want from us? I want what I've always wanted, Mom. To be seen and valued for who I am, not what I can provide. Scott stood up again. This is bullshit. You hit the lottery by pure luck, and now you're acting like you're some kind of self-help guru. You know what? Keep your money. We don't need it. As he stormed toward the door, I called after him. Scott, the second mortgage on Mom and Dad's house that was paid off mysteriously? That was me. I did it anonymously because I didn't want them risking their retirement for your wedding. He froze, turning slowly. What? I paid off their mortgage, I repeated. Not for recognition or gratitude, but because despite everything, I care about their well-being. For the first time that evening, Scott seemed genuinely speechless. Scott's stunned expression gradually morphed into something harder to read, confusion mixed with what might have been the first glimmer of self-awareness I'd ever seen in my brother. You paid off their mortgage? How much was it? He asked. $250,000, my father answered quietly. Your mother and I. We took out a second mortgage to help with expenses. For my wedding? Scott asked, his voice uncharacteristically small. My mother nodded, not meeting his eyes. Scott sank back into his chair. I had no idea. You told me you had the wedding budget covered, that it wasn't a strain. We didn't want to worry you, my mother said. I took a deep breath. This is what I'm talking about. Our family has these patterns where certain truths aren't spoken, certain burdens aren't shared equally. It's created an unhealthy dynamic for all of us. My father straightened in his chair, some of his usual authority returning. Randy, I think you're exaggerating. Every family has their unique way of operating. We've always done what we thought was best for both our sons. I believe you think that's true, I acknowledged. But I'd like to share some specific examples of what I experienced growing up. Over the next 30 minutes, I calmly recounted incidents from throughout my life where the disparity in how my brother and I were treated had been most pronounced. I wasn't angry or accusatory, simply matter of fact. I described the different standards for academic achievement, the disparity in gifts and opportunities, and the subtle ways my accomplishments had been minimized while Scott's had been celebrated. You're too sensitive, my father interrupted. You're remembering things selectively. Am I? I asked. I stood and retrieved a photo album I'd prepared, filled with family photos and documents that illustrated the patterns I was describing. There were Christmas photos showing the stark differences in our gifts, financial records of college expenses, and even report cards where my A's had received less acknowledgement than Scott's B's. I'm not bringing these up to hurt anyone, I explained. I'm bringing them up because we can't heal what we don't acknowledge. My mother began to cry in earnest. I didn't realize. I never meant to make you feel less loved. I know, Mom, I said gently. But impact matters more than intention. Scott had been unusually quiet, flipping through the photo album with a furrowed brow. Some of this stuff. I never noticed it before. I just thought. I don't know what I thought. You thought you were entitled to more, Jessica said, speaking up for the first time in a while. Because that's what you were taught. Scott bristled momentarily, then deflated. Maybe, he admitted reluctantly. My father, however, was becoming defensive. This feels like an ambush, Randy. You invite us to dinner, reveal this lottery business, and then proceed to put us on trial for perceived slights from decades ago. They weren't perceived, Dad. They were real. And they've shaped our family dynamic into something unhealthy. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm trying to create an opportunity for something better. By holding your new fortune over our heads, he challenged. No, I replied firmly. By being honest about patterns that have gone unaddressed for too long. Fine, my father said, his tone hardening. You want honesty? The truth is, Scott was easier to connect with. He was outgoing, athletic, sociable, the kind of son a man can brag about at the country club. You were always quiet, with your books and science projects. We didn't know what to do with you half the time." The room fell silent. His words stung. But there was also something liberating about finally hearing the truth spoken aloud. "Thank you for being honest," I said quietly. "That couldn't have been easy to admit." My mother reached for my hand across the table. "Randy, we do love you. We always have. We didn't always show it well." "I know you love me," I acknowledged. "But love without respect and equal treatment isn't enough." Scott pushed back from the table. "So what now? You've made your point. You're rich. We've been terrible to you. And you're the bigger person for paying off Mom and Dad's mortgage. What do you actually want from us?" "I want us to try building relationships based on mutual respect," I answered. "No financial expectations, no old patterns, just genuine connection." "And the money?" my father asked, unable to help himself. "The money is mine to manage responsibly," I said firmly. "I've established a foundation for educational equity. I'm creating scholarship funds for underprivileged students. I'm securing my future and Jessica's. But I'm not using it to buy relationships or approval." "So you won't help your family at all?" Scott pressed. "I didn't say that. I've already established trust to ensure Mom and Dad's retirement and healthcare needs are covered. But I won't fund business ventures without proper vetting, and I won't be an open checkbook for anyone's wants." My father looked startled. "You've set up trusts for us? Without telling us?" "Yes. Because regardless of our complicated history, I don't want you to worry about basic security in your older years." My mother's tears flowed freely now. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now," I told her gently. "This is a lot to process for everyone." Scott had grown unusually reflective. "All these years," he said slowly, "I never really thought about how different things were for us. It just seemed normal." "Because it was your normal," Jessica observed. He nodded slowly. "I guess I have some thinking to do." We finished dinner in a strange, subdued atmosphere. As everyone prepared to leave, I addressed them one final time. "I know tonight has been difficult and emotional. I don't expect immediate transformation. All I'm asking is that we begin the work of creating healthier relationships. Not because of the money, but in spite of it." My father shook my hand stiffly, still processing. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering "I'm sorry" in my ear. Scott was the last to leave. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I think I get it. Not completely. But I'm starting to see things differently." It wasn't a profound transformation, but it was a start. As Jessica and I closed the door behind them, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth had finally been spoken. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked, wrapping her arms around me. "Better than okay," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I'm not playing a role in my family. I'm just being me." The next day, I received separate text messages from each family member. My father's was brief and formal. "Thank you for dinner. Need time to process everything. We'll call next week." My mother's was longer and more emotional. "My dear son, I didn't sleep last night thinking about everything you shared. I never meant to hurt you, but I see now that good intentions aren't enough. I hope you'll give us a chance to do better." Scott surprised me most. "Hey bro, last night was intense. Been thinking a lot. Never saw things from your perspective before. Not sure what happens next, but I want to try to be better. Also, calling off the medical spa idea. Going to focus on my actual job for a while. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are all we need to chart a new course." The months following our family dinner were challenging but ultimately transformative. As news of my lottery win became public, I faced the expected media attention and sudden friends appearing from the woodwork. Through it all, I maintained my teaching position, though I reduced to part-time to focus on establishing the educational foundation that had become my passion project. My relationship with my family evolved slowly, with occasional setbacks but steady progress overall. My father, unsurprisingly, struggled the most with our new dynamic. After decades of being the financial authority in the family, he found it difficult to relate to me without offering unsolicited investment advice or subtly requesting funds for various ventures. "Dad," I finally told him during a tense lunch 6 weeks after our dinner, "I value your experience in business, But I need you to understand that I have excellent financial advisors, and my priorities for this money may be different from what yours would be. I'm just trying to help, he insisted. There are opportunities you might miss without proper guidance. I know that's your intention, I acknowledged. But what I need from you isn't financial advice. I need a father who's interested in who I am as a person, not what I can do with my money. He fell silent, considering my words. I'm not sure I know how to be that kind of father, he admitted finally, with rare vulnerability. We can figure it out together, I offered. But it starts with listening to each other. Really listening. My mother made more immediate efforts to change. She began therapy on her own initiative and invited me to join for several sessions focused on family dynamics. During one particularly emotional session, she broke down completely. I always thought giving things to your children was how you showed love, she sobbed. My parents never had anything to give us, and I promised myself my children would have everything. Somehow along the way, I lost sight of what everything really means. Scott's transformation surprised everyone, myself included. After initially withdrawing from family gatherings, he reached out to me directly, asking if we could meet one-on-one. We sat at a local coffee shop, the awkwardness between us palpable until Scott finally spoke. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began, staring into his cup, about how things were growing up. I always thought I was just, I don't know, better at things, more deserving. It never occurred to me that I was being set up to succeed while you were being left to figure it out on your own. It's not your fault, I said. You were a kid too. We were both shaped by the dynamic our parents created. He nodded slowly. Maybe. But I'm an adult now. And the way I reacted when you told us about the lottery that was on me, first thing I did was try to get $2 million out of you for some half-baked business idea. I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't your finest moment. He actually laughed. No, it wasn't. His expression turned serious again. Amber and I have been talking a lot about the kind of family we want to build someday. I don't want to repeat these patterns, Randy. That's really mature of you, Scott. He shrugged. Don't look so shocked. I'm capable of growth. After a pause, he added, sometimes. The wedding plans had been significantly downsized, with Scott and Amber opting for a more intimate ceremony that they could afford without putting our parents into debt. I was surprised and touched when Scott asked me to be his best man, a role I had assumed would go to one of his many charismatic friends. You're my brother, he said simply when I questioned his choice. It's time I started acting like that means something. Meanwhile, Jessica and I had been discussing our own future. After much consideration, we decided to get engaged, though we planned a longer engagement to ensure our relationship remained grounded despite the major life changes. I don't want anyone thinking I'm marrying you for your money, Jessica joked as we looked at simple, elegant rings. Pretty long con if you were, I replied. 3 years of dating a teacher on the off chance he might win the lottery. She chose a modest emerald ring that suited her perfectly, and we agreed to a small wedding the following spring. I used a portion of my winnings to purchase a comfortable but not ostentatious home near the coast, where we planned to split our time with our city residents. The remainder was carefully structured into various investment vehicles and charitable foundations, with education remaining my primary philanthropic focus. True to my word, I established trusts to secure my parents' retirement and healthcare needs, structured in a way that provided security without enabling unhealthy financial dependence. I also created education trusts for Scott's future children, ensuring that the next generation would have equal opportunities regardless of parental favoritism. 6 months after our fateful dinner, my father invited me to lunch without prompting. I've been meeting with a therapist, he announced without preamble as we sat down. Your mother's idea at first, but I found it surprisingly helpful. I nearly dropped my menu in shock. That's great, Dad. I'm beginning to understand some things about myself, he continued. How my own father's constant criticism affected how I parented you boys. How I transferred my own insecurities onto my expectations. He cleared his throat. I know it doesn't change the past, but I want you to know I'm working on being better. That means a lot, I said, genuinely moved. He reached across the table and placed his hand on mine, an unprecedented gesture of affection. I'm proud of you, son. Not because of the money, but because of who you are. It's taken me far too long to see it, but you're an exceptional person. You always have been." My eyes burned with unexpected tears. "Thanks, Dad. That's all I ever wanted to hear." The holidays arrived, bringing the first true test of our family's new dynamics. My mother insisted on hosting at their house one last time before we downsize, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different from gatherings past. Scott arrived without expensive gifts or grand announcements, instead bringing homemade bread that he and Amber had learned to make in a cooking class. My parents had thoughtfully prepared favorite dishes from both my childhood and Scott's, acknowledging both of us equally. Most significantly, when gifts were exchanged, they were of similar value and chosen with genuine consideration of each recipient's interests and preferences. My father gave me a first edition of a science book I had loved as a child, clearly the result of careful searching rather than convenient shopping. "I remembered how you used to carry the paperback version everywhere," he said as I unwrapped it. "Pages all dog-eared and marked up with your notes." "You noticed that?" I asked, surprised. "I noticed more than I let on," he admitted. "I just didn't know how to show it properly." As the evening wound down, my mother raised her glass for a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, "and to the most valuable gift we've received this year, the chance to become the family we should have been all along." We clinked glasses, the moment simple but profound. Later that night, as Jessica and I drove home, she asked, "Do you think they've really changed?" I considered the question carefully. "I think they're trying, and that's a start. Real change takes time." Was it worth it? The confrontation? The painful conversations? "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. "For the first time in my life, I feel seen by my family. Not for what I have, but for who I am." In the year since winning the lottery, I had learned that money could buy security, comfort, and opportunity. But the most valuable things, true connection, self-respect, and authentic relationships, couldn't be purchased at any price. They had to be built through honesty, boundaries, and the courage to speak difficult truths. I continued teaching, finding deeper purpose in connecting with students who reminded me of my younger self. My educational foundation grew, providing resources for ambitious students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Jessica and I married in a joyful but intimate ceremony, surrounded by people who had loved us before the money and would love us regardless of it. Scott and Amber welcomed their first child the following year, a daughter they named Hope. When they asked me to be her godfather, I accepted with a full heart. The lottery ticket that my parents had given me as an afterthought had indeed changed my life, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. The true value hadn't been in the millions of dollars, but in the opportunity it provided to break destructive patterns and build something healthier in their place. As I look back now, I realize that the greatest win wasn't the jackpot. It was finding the courage to stand in my truth and the wisdom to use unexpected fortune as a tool for growth rather than revenge. In the end, the lesson I taught my family was the same one I had to learn myself: that our worth isn't measured by what we have, but by how we treat those around us. What would you do if fortune suddenly reversed long-standing family dynamics? Would you seek revenge, disappear entirely, or try to build something new from the broken pieces of the past? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in this story, please like and subscribe to hear more experiences that might resonate with your own life journey. Share with someone who might need to be reminded of their intrinsic worth beyond what they can provide to others. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your value never depends on anyone else's recognition of it.